And at this time, we will hear House Bill 7539 by Representative Morgan. Representative Morgan, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. My bill seeks to enshrine the protections and benefits of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 in our state law for all the children and teachers in our school systems. I am seeking to get our school establishment, our educational establishment, to abandon the activist racial and sexualization of our school curriculum and once again focus on its core mission, which is high expectations for our students, a focus on academic excellence, teaching learning skills for mastery, and maximizing the potential of every child so that they can have successful adult lives. Each student deserves the best education we can offer. Each deserves to be treated and respected as individuals and not as members of a race, sex, or ethnic identity group. I reject the notion that white and Asian children do not enjoy the same protections of the Civil Rights Act as any other race. All of them, all of our children and our school teachers deserve those protections. Unfortunately, in recent years, our school systems and now our curriculum have been racialized. And a term called centering, or a concept called centering, has found its way into curriculum and into the classroom, into our instructional material. What am I asking for? I don't want children to be discriminated against. I don't want them to be segregated. It's not controversial, is it? It isn't. I don't want them to be segregated based upon race or sex or ethnicity. I don't want them to be judged by stereotypes. I don't want children to be stereotyped just because they're a race or a gender. I don't want racial slurs or terms that are pejorative used in a classroom to stigmatize any child based upon their immutable characteristics. I want the instructional materials that are used in our classrooms to be consistent with the protections of the Civil Rights Act. No child should be accused of being inherently racist or sexist or oppressed or oppressive because of their race, because of their skin color. No student should be taught that they are inherently superior or inferior based upon their immutable characteristics. And no child and no individual should be discriminated against or receive adverse treatment solely or partially because of their race, their gender, their ethnicity, or their religion. That's not controversial. It's what we should expect in our schools. No child should be made to bear responsibility for actions, historical events committed in the past. A German-American child is not responsible for the Holocaust. A Japanese-American child is not responsible for World War II and Pearl Harbor. That's pretty non-controversial. And yet, in our schools today, children are being made responsible for historical acts over which they have no connection. Children should be taught that meritocracy is not racist, but instead it is fundamental to the pursuit of happiness and to be rewarded for their efforts. These goals are not controversial. They're part of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. They're part of American life. And we fought very hard to get those enshrined in federal law and to make sure that every child and every teacher and every citizen of the United States enjoys their protections. But in order to make sure that those protections and those benefits of the Civil Rights Act are actually used in our schools and are present there, we have to make sure that the instructional materials match those goals and those ideals. And that's where centering comes in. I've been contacted by many teachers across Rhode Island, and I have been to their classrooms, and I have viewed and read many of the books, and I've had conversations with teachers. And all I can say is the books that I was familiar with, the anthologies and the regular history books, have been replaced now by paperbacks. And those paperbacks have not been chosen for high-quality academic work. They are activist literature. They are activist books. And they're being used to negatively divide or race shame our children. And that's antithetical to their civil rights. So my bill says we can't choose activist instructional materials with activist outcomes in mind. We've got to prevent that. We have to choose instructional material that raises up the educational levels and abilities of our students. I see a lot of students here. You're going to be adults very soon. I want you to have successful lives. I want every child in Rhode Island to get out of high school with all of the skills and knowledge they need to get great jobs and have successful, prosperous lives. And that is not what I see in the quality of the instructional materials that is in our schools today. They are more interested in ideology than they are in high literary standards. And that weakens your education, ultimately, and your ability to later in life enjoy the benefits of being an American citizen. My bill does not ban any books except pornography or any content. In fact, it emphatically states that historical factual events must be taught as historical factual events. And quite frankly, I want all of American history and literature taught, all of it. I don't want just Black history taught. That's true, because America is more than Black history. It's more than Hispanic history. We have a wonderful country, and there have been contributions from every race, literary and in science and in manufacturing, all kinds of accomplishments. America has given hundreds of millions of people better, more prosperous lives, and we should know about that. Have we done some bad things? Yes. So the ugly needs to be included. Slavery was evil. Jim Crow was horrible. And there are many bad, bad things that happened in our history. But that has to be balanced with the good things that we've done. And that's not what is happening in our classrooms today. And that is just divisive to our society. We are a multicultural society, and we must learn to love one another and to celebrate one another, not to be divided from one another based upon immutable characteristics. I have put in my bill the concept of balancing. Like I said, factual historical events, they must be taught as factual historical events. They need to be taught. Students need to know what happened in the past. But whenever there is an ideological subject or ideological content, teachers must balance that ideological content. So let me give you an example. If the book, How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibrahim X. Kendi is assigned and studied, it has to be accompanied by a book similar to John McWhorter's Woke Racism, How a New Religion Has Betrayed Black America, or a book of similar content. If the school has Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow, Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colonial Colorblindness, it has to be accompanied by something like Heather McDonald's The War on Cops and how the attack on law and order makes everyone less safe. Because that is ideological. There are two sides of that. And it's important for students to develop into critical thinkers. Teachers are control persons in a child's life. Kids look up to them. Whatever a teacher says, they'll believe it because they like their teachers. And because of that control aspect of teachers, they give you good grades, they praise you, or they yell at you, and they can send you to detention. We just heard about detention. Kids can be easily swayed and manipulated. So, my bill prohibits teachers from electioneering, pursuing activism, or advocating for specific political beliefs or candidates in our schools. Those topics, values, and beliefs are reserved for parents. And teachers who seek to insert themselves between children and their parents in the formation of those values are indoctrinating. They are not teaching. Teachers must be neutral when they give that information. Other than that, they are indoctrination experts. They are no longer teaching, and they are no longer developing our children into critical thinkers. And we need children to be critical thinkers, to think for themselves, because eventually they will be adults. They are the next generation, and we need them to be the best they can be. Only four sentences in my bill deal with the inappropriate sexualization of our children. Teachers are not therapists. They are not psychologists. They are subject matter experts. They don't have clinical or other mental health training. And they must not take it upon themselves to guide children on issues of sexual preference, gender dysphoria, or sexual lifestyle. You know, in the workplaces of today, if a male supervisor so much as compliments a female subordinate on how she looks, you look nice in that dress, he can be fired. And yet, teachers think that it is part of their job to delve into the intimate and very personal sexual emotions and feelings and lives of minors. It is inappropriate, and quite frankly, it's creepy. And their inappropriateness is leading to misdiagnosis and actual harm. I remember being a teenager. I'm glad I'm not one anymore. I remember having a pimple on my chin, and it was traumatic. I had scabs on my knees because I was the clumsiest kid, and that was traumatic. Some kids grow faster than others, they develop faster than others. Some are smaller, and for them it's traumatic. They can develop depression. And teachers, not being mental health professionals, can miss the fact that a child is depressed and instead start talking to them about gender dysphoria. Kids can have emotional trauma due to a divorce or a death in the family or any number of things, and they can be misdiagnosed by a subject matter expert who is not a mental health professional. Children can be swayed into taking a path that normally they wouldn't. 80% of all the children who report some issues with gender dysphoria, 80% of them grow out of it and stay with their biological sex. That's the data, 80%. I'll get it for you. Just because.
Ladies and gentlemen, I know that we see bad role models sometimes on TV, like the Jerry Springer Show. This is not the Jerry Springer Show, where we try to be respectful, and there's no conversation that's going to go back and forth. Please conclude your remarks, Representative, and continue.
Thank you, Chairman. Puberty blockers, hormone therapy, surgeries have life-altering changes. And those children who have been pushed into taking that pathway and later in life decide to detransition, find themselves sterile, with lower cognitive abilities, with weaker bones, and if they go into surgery, with permanent disfiguration of their bodies. And they are now suing school systems because teachers who are not mental health professionals led them down that path. It is a growing industry of attorneys and lawyers who are now suing schools for leading children down a path that they later regret because teachers are not mental health professionals. That belongs to parents. Teachers, school officials may not, in my bill, delve into the intimate and personal sex lives of their minor students unless they have the written permission of the parents. Parents are the ones who have the right to help their children, to get the therapists, to hire the psychologist to help their child. A subject matter expert does not. Schools were started with one purpose in mind, and that is academic excellence and preparing our children for successful adult lives. They are not here to indoctrinate. They are not here to delve into the personal sexual lives of minors. They are there to teach them how to be critical thinkers, how to deal with the world when they are adults, so they can be successful and prosperous adults. I have been threatened. I have received the most vulgar and obscene texts and voicemails. Teachers at Classical High School organized walkout, too, in which they didn't have to teach because they set the students outside. So much better to let the students go early rather than actually teach them.
Okay, no, 1 minute, please. Do not interrupt. Please proceed.
I have been informed that teachers have given students templates to write letters against this bill. Well, that's actually a violation of their civil rights. Because while we have the civil right to have freedom of speech, there is also something called protected speech. And that means that you cannot be compelled or coerced to write something that you don't actually believe in yourself.
Representative Morgan.
That is indoctrination.
Yeah.
That is not teaching. And my bill is focused on giving our students the best education they can to be successful adults, not to be indoctrinated activists. Thank you.
Thank you. You can stay right there. 1 minute, please.